You've heard of the Grand Northern Conspiracy, but have you heard of the 6 Little Schemes? The North is a revolving door of plots and mysteries, and I think this is what George Martin loves. Remember when John Aaron got murdered in 1996? Instead of one conspiracy masterminded by Littlefinger and Lysa, there were likely 3 mini-plots involving Varys, Littlefinger and Lysa, and Cersei and Pycelle. The same thing is happening in the North. I believe there are at least 6 different conspiracies that will affect the Winds of Winter. I covered this topic with some depth in my Chaos in the North video, but my opinions are ever evolving and fickle as a friend from the fingers. So here are all the northern conspiracies in the Winds of Winter. We'll begin with House Karstark because their conspiracy already failed, but it does have lasting implications on the narrative. In A Dance with Dragons, the rightful Lord of Karhold is Haryon Karstark, son of Rickard, who Robb beheaded. After Haryon fails to take Duskendale, and then the Red Wedding happens, he's imprisoned at Maidenpool, where he probably still remains. The Book 5 appendix says he's still there, and his great-uncle Arnulf Karstark and his son Cregan assume Haryon is dead. So they tried to take over the Karhold by scheming to force Alys Karstark, Haryon's little sister, and the rightful Lady of Karhold, if he is dead, to marry her first cousin once removed, Cregan, thereby transferring the lordship to Arnulf's line instead of Rickard's. To seal the deal, Arnulf pledged himself to Stannis, hoping to earn the ire of the Iron Throne, so the Lannisters would execute Haryon, and Arnulf could give Karhold to Cregan with ease. Of course, Alys Karstark escapes to Castle Black, informs Jon Snow of Arnulf's treachery, and Jon Snow thus imprisons Cregan Karstark, who comes for his bride, and informs Stannis that Arnulf will betray him on behalf of Roose Bolton. As things stand, Cregan Karstark is in prison at Castle Black, and Arnulf Karstark, his son Arthur, and his 3 grandsons will be dealt with by Stannis. Stannis says all 5 will die, either by fire or by more humane methods, depending on if they confess. Meanwhile, Jon married Alys Karstark to Sigorn, the young Megnar of the Thenn. Together, they form an entirely new house, the House of Thenn, with a red blazing sun on white for their sigil instead of the traditional white sun on black. They take Sigorn's 200 men to Karhold, as Alys believes the castle will open its gates for her. If Haryon does die, Sigorn and Alys will rule Karhold, and will be eternally loyal to Jon and House Stark. The only complications to watch out for in Winds are if Haryon Karstark survives and makes it back north. What will the tension between himself and his new wildling brother-in-law look like? And there's always a small chance that whatever meager garrison is left at Karhold doesn't want to open its gates for 200 wildlings, and a small skirmish occurs. Overall, I don't see the Karstarks having a huge impact on the future of northern politics, but expect them to be Team Stark. Also, the Alys-Sigorn match is one of the cutest couples George has ever put together. I love them. Mance Rayder and Red Priestess Melisandre hatched a scheme that has already played out. The only mystery is what Mance Rayder will do next. In Book 5, Mance is apparently burned alive, but it was actually another wildling called Rattleshirt who was wearing a glamour. Basically, a magical disguise concocted by Melisandre using a ruby, and everyone at Castle Black thought it was really Mance who died. So Jon and Mel send Mance to Winterfell with 6 spearwives in order to save Arya. In exchange, Jon holds Mance's son Aemon. At least, Mance thinks the baby is his. It's actually Gilly's son, and Gilly has Mance's boy in the south. Anyways, Mance pretends to be a bard called Abel, an anagram of Bael the Bard, and eventually enlists Theon's help to free Arya from Ramsay. Of course, Arya is actually Jane Poole, but Mance doesn't know that, and Theon doesn't tell. In preview chapters for the Winds of Winter, we know that Theon and Jane made it to Stannis' camp, so Mance's mission was successful. His whereabouts, however, are unknown. Ramsay's pink letter, which I argued in Chaos in the North was tampered with by Bowen Marsh and his conspirators, says that Mance is being kept in a cage with a blanket made from the skins of his spearwives. While lots of stuff that Pink Letter says may be questionable, I think Mance's condition is probably the truth. It's bleak, but twisted and fitting that the cunning barred king beyond the wall, who once again carried out another covert operation successfully, must now pay the price with his own life, and Mance will die honestly believing that he saved Jon Snow's sister, that his own son is safe at the wall, and that his free folk are south, rallying around Jon and Tormund to defend the north against the others. Mance's work in uniting all the wildlings and getting them to safety is done, and I'm not sure he has much left to add to the narrative that can't be fulfilled by Tormund Giantsbane and a resurrected Jon Snow. This case is closed. Now let's do the big one. Wyman Manderly is the sleeping serpent, the meditating merman, feigning support for Roose Bolton while collaborating with Robert Glover, Wex Pike, Theon's mute former squire, and Davos Seaworth to retrieve Rickon Stark from the island of Skagos and install him as Lord of Winterfell. Wyman pretends to execute Davos, so as a reward, Cersei sends his son Willis back home to White Harbor, playing right into Wyman's hands. Wyman then gives probably the greatest monologue in A Song of Ice and Fire history, which I'm sure you all know by heart, but I'm going to recite anyways, because of course I am. Soon I must return to the feast to toast my friends of Frey. They watch me, sir. Day and night their eyes are on me, noses sniffing for some whiff of treachery. You saw them, the arrogant Sir Jared and his nephew Rhaegar, that smirking worm who wears a dragon's name. Behind them both stands Simon, clinking coins. That one has bought and paid for several of my servants and 2 of my knights. One of his wife's handmaids has found her way into the bed of my own fool. If Stannis wonders that my letters say so little, it is because I dare not even trust my maester. Theomore is all head and no heart. You heard him in my hall. Maesters are supposed to put aside old loyalties when they don their chains. But I cannot forget that Theomore was born a Lannister of Lannisport, and claims some distant kinship to the Lannisters of Casterly Rock. Foes and false friends are all around me, Lord Davos. They infest my city like roaches, and at night I feel them crawling over me. My son Wendell came to the twins a guest. He ate Lord Walder's bread and salt, and hung his sword upon the wall to feast with friends. And they murdered him. Murdered, I say, and may the Freys choke upon their fables. I drink with Jared, jape with Simon, promise Rhaegar the hand of my own beloved granddaughter. But never think that means I have forgotten. The North remembers, Lord Davos. The North remembers, and the mummer's farce is almost done. My son is home. I have a whole video about House Manderly, but it surprises absolutely no one that I have more to say. 3 Freys riding palfreys gifted to them by Manderly all disappear. Later, 3 pies show up at the wedding feast, and Wyman tells Abel, Mance Rayder by the way, to sing the song about the rat cook, a legend from the Night Fort about a cook who murdered the son of an Andal king he was hosting, and baked the son's remains into a pie, which the king happily ate. The exact same thing happens in Book 5, I am sure. Wyman Manderly whipped up some Frey pies. The Freys start accusing Wyman of murdering their kinsman, but Wyman's defense is ironclad. So young, though mayhaps this was a blessing. Had he lived, he would have grown up to be a Frey. We learn that Wyman's army have been sent out with the Freys to attack Stannis. This is the Battle of Ice, or the Battle at the Crofters' Village, which we'll see early in the Winds of Winter. Theon, who spent a lot of time around Manderly, tells Stannis he doubts Wyman would fight alongside the Freys. Either he'll attack first or second, or perhaps not at all. What happens to Wyman depends on what you think happens to Stannis. I think Wyman gives his men orders to switch over to Stannis' side and help him defeat the Freys. Roose will then either kill Wyman or keep him hostage inside Winterfell. Stannis won't have the strength or time to storm or besiege Winterfell, so he'll go back to the Wall and burn Shireen. Jon Snow will awaken, and he'll take the wildlings and any of Stannis' army who will join him down to Winterfell and take vengeance on the Boltons. Jon will win the Battle of the Bastards against Ramsay, liberate Winterfell, and I don't know how Wyman, Davos, and Rickon fit in. Maybe Davos and Rickon join Jon's camp, and Jon begins fighting in Rickon's name. Assuming Roose doesn't execute Wyman, he may get what he wishes and become Lord Rickon's regent. He and Jon can help rule the North together. Or maybe Roose kills him. I have a hunch that Wyman expects to die, and can now do so knowing the succession of White Harbor is secure, based on the final line of his epic monologue. Wyman was waiting for Willis to come home before betraying the Boltons. Or maybe someone does a rescue mission. I like the idea of Davos coming back south and saving Wyman from Winterfell, although his stealth skills are best displayed on water, not land. The can of worms is open and endless at this point, and your guess is as good as mine for how Wyman Manderly's plot ends. Another conspiracy related to the Battle of Ice concerns Crowfood and Horsebane Umber. Crowfood is anti-Bolton, and is currently digging holes directly outside Winterfell's walls, in a blizzard, in the hopes that Bolton's army will fall into the traps and be unable to attack Stannis. Theon tells us that Aenys Frey broke his neck in these traps, but Hostine only lost his horse. We don't know how much of the advancing Frey army Crowfood was able to take down. Crowfood's group is a bunch of young green boys, and a few half-crippled sergeants. The Umber men are with Horsebane, who is ostensibly pro-Bolton, and inside Winterfell with Roose, although his men are quite old. Most of the able Umber fighters died in the war or are still imprisoned with Lord Greatjon at the Twins. It's believed that Horsebane only supports Bolton so that the Freys don't execute the Greatjon. Jaime wants all of House Frey's prisoners handed over to the Crown, meaning the Greatjon will be in transport through the Riverlands and could potentially be freed by the Brotherhood without banners. The Brotherhood is led by Lady Stoneheart, the artist formerly known as Catelyn Stark. And if she doesn't kill Jaime, then Jaime is with them too. Maybe they'll free the Greatjon, who, by the way, was also present at Robb's will. In 2014, George Martin appeared on Last Week Tonight.
I just killed 3 of your favorite characters.
And a bunch of people on Reddit were able to decode part of his manuscript that was on his screen. Assuming this is correct and real, and George doesn't change his mind, here's a spoiler regarding the Umbers. Skip to the next section if you want to avoid it. Apparently, we'll see the beginning of the Battle of Ice through an Asha Greyjoy POV chapter, and she witnesses a man who can only be Hostine Frey, carrying a white-bearded, one-eyed, decapitated bloody head on a weirwood spear. This is Crowfood Umber, dead. Horsebane will probably stay close to Roose Bolton until he knows the Greatjon is safe. Barbrey Dustin believes the same, and she's pretty smart. The North remembers, and the Umbers will back House Stark. Speaking of Lady Dustin, she's next, and she's bitter. It's hard to know who she hates more, Ned Stark or Roose Bolton. Like Manderly and Horsebane, Barbrey Dustin is inside Winterfell on Team Roose. Barbrey's sister, Bethany Riswell, was Roose Bolton's second wife, and their son Domeric, Barbrey's nephew, lived with her at Barrowton for a few years. But Domeric died in 297, just before the series begins, and Barbrey suspects Ramsay Bolton murdered him to advance himself as Roose's heir. Domeric was a nice lad who just wanted a brother, but Roose also believes that his bastard poisoned his trueborn to death. As a reward for killing his half-brother, Ramsay got to come live with Roose at the Dreadfort, and he earned the ire of Lady Dustin. But she hates the Starks too. As a girl, she had a romance with Ned's older brother, Brandon the Wild Wolf. He even took her virginity, and Barbrey believes he wanted to marry her until Lord Rickard let his maester convince him that a betrothal to Catelyn Tully was a better idea. Strike 1. Barbrey ended up marrying Lord Willem Dustin, but Willem rode off with Ned in Robert's Rebellion and was killed by the Kingsguard at the Tower of Joy. Ned laid Willem to rest on sight, using the stones from the Tower of Joy as a cairn. He brought his sister Lyanna's remains all the way back north, but didn't do the same for Barbrey's husband. Strike 2, and you're out. Barbrey says that in retaliation for not receiving Willem's bones, she won't allow Ned's bones to reach Winterfell. She'll intercept them and feed his bones to her dogs. However, I believe she's still a Stark woman through and through, acting more angry about the Starks than she really is, as a pretense to make Roose Bolton believe she's a staunch supporter of his. Her ultimate goals are a little obfuscated for now, as she's unwilling to stick her neck out too far for either side. She has no love for the Boltons or Freys, and I think we'll see Barbrey help in some way with a Stark restoration in the Winds of Winter. Last up, a character we've literally never seen on page before, Howland Reed, Lord of Greywater Watch. His loyalty to House Stark, unlike Barbrey Dustin, is completely unquestionable. He was one of Ned's closest friends during the war. He sent his children Jojen and Mira to aid Bran on his magical green-seeing quest, and King Robb entrusted him to bleed the Lannisters should they ride north, and to coordinate an attack on the Ironborn at Moat Cailin that never happened because Robb took an arrow to the knee. After the Boltons took Winterfell, the Crannogmen pester the Ironborn with poisoned arrows. The question about Howland Reed isn't will he support House Stark, it's how will George implement everything he knows into the story. Howland is a major Chekhov's gun. We know he was there with Ned when Lyanna died, meaning he knows about whatever happened in the Tower of Joy, most likely Jon Snow's birth. In addition to R plus L equals J, Howland probably knows about Robb's will, which stated that Jon should be released from the Watch to become king in the north. Robb sent Mage Mormont and Galbert Glover on 2 separate boats to meet Howland and arrange the attack on Moat Cailin. Mormont and Glover were both at Robb's will meeting, and can tell Howland. We don't have a POV character in the neck right now, so we don't know if Mage and Galbert ever made it. I bet they did, or else that plot thread just goes nowhere. We also learned that Ned's bones, which Catelyn sent north with Halas Mullen to be buried in the crypts, went into the neck and have never emerged. Lady Dustin is waiting to steal them, but I'd wager Howland is keeping his old friend's bones, waiting until the dust clears at Winterfell to safely bury Ned with his family. We also read that the Brotherhood without banners went into the neck in Book 4, meaning that Lady Stoneheart and Howland Reed potentially already met off-page. Maybe they discussed Winterfell's succession. Stoneheart still carries Robb's Crown of Winter, so she could have told Howland to crown Arya or Sansa or Bran or whichever Stark he might find. And Howland could have told her that Jon wasn't Ned's bastard, but instead his nephew, Lyanna's bastard. We know the Brotherhood go back south and coerce Brienne into luring Jaime into his doom, but maybe they'll meet up with Arya when she comes back to Westeros. Arya, Brienne, and Jaime, along with Nymeria's Wolfpack, will lead the Brotherhood north to find Jon and restore the Starks to Winterfell. And if they do, I'll bet this is when we finally see Howland Reed, tagging along in an Arya POV chapter, to go to Winterfell with her father's bones and all his secrets. Let me know down in the comments if there's any Northern conspiracies I missed. What do you think Barbrey Dustin and Howland Reed are up to? Thanks for watching and subscribing.